monoglot there, the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, laying out some of the measures that the Welsh Government will employ as it plots a cautious route out of lockdown measures. This is worrying as well, isn't it? As they say, all of their decisions are based on the latest scientific advice, but they appear to be in a slightly different place. Depending on your perspective, I think you could argue a rather different place from England. And England now, of course, is also in need of further qualification because, as far as I can tell, the government have just used that bailout that TfL needed, as Sadiq Khan explained to us yesterday, to increase the congestion charge while simultaneously telling people to avoid public transport if they can. So you've got Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland and London arguably at odds with the Westminster government, a government which, I'm never entirely comfortable doing retrospective criticism of callers, but the idea that if you voted for Boris Johnson, you should have known that he'd handle this appallingly is heartbreaking, isn't it, in its crassness. But that is the difference. So there is a different approach in Wales to the approach on the other side of Offa's Dyke, which is a historically slightly inaccurate distinction, but you know exactly what I mean, and a traffic light system for phased reductions in the lockdown. So what's the weirdest thing you've heard this week? I think it was probably, for me, the idea that everybody in the Department of Transport had been working towards May the 18th as a date upon which to commence some sort of loosening. And then on May the 10th, Boris Johnson announced that it was going to be tomorrow. The first that the Mayor of London heard of that, he told us yesterday, was in a Cobra meeting 2 hours before the press conference. And no denials from the Department of Transport, I can tell you, that they were working towards the 18th until either it just slipped out of Boris Johnson's mouth by accident, or he misspoke, or he'd been misleading his own ministers prior to that point. And now we've got this Welsh scenario where, this is a land border that is utterly, utterly invisible. And the idea that you could somehow have one system in place on one side of it and another system in place on the other side is just an indication of what happens when Westminster leaves such a vacuum in the place where clarity and leadership should have